The Cincinnati Bengals fall to 0-2 after another last-second loss to Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys. Is it time to push the panic button?
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you coverage of your Cincinnati Bengals every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Bengals is presented by Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. You're going to get a 100% instant deposit bonus up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON if you're a first-time user. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. James, the Cincinnati Bengals are 0-2, and since 1990, teams that start the season 0-2 have an 11% chance, historically, of making the playoffs. And that could be different for this team, but last year, 0 teams, and maybe the last 2 years, 0 teams that started 0-2 made the playoffs. That's a conversation to probably be had down the road. Once this team has more games under its belt, we'll have a better idea of whether this is a playoff team or not. But certainly much will need to change, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But in week 2 against Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys offense that has had some of its teeth removed in the way of injury, there can start to be some questions about the defense, which again played well. But if you're nitpicking, and I think you can for an 0-2 team, you can find some warts there. But I think it all starts on the offense.
Yeah, it certainly starts on the offense. And everything was painful today. Everything was tough. Everything took way more effort, and it was just hard. Nothing came easy. And even on the 19-play drive, 78 yards, that wasn't fun. Now, the end result was what Bengals fans were hoping to see, which was the touchdown to T. Higgins and the 2-point conversion to Tyler Boyd. But that wasn't a fun drive. That wasn't enjoyable, I think, for anyone outside of the end result. And that's the thing, is this offense, it's not good right now. It's a bad offense. And in that, they had no business going out there and playing the way they did. They had no business going out there and, having 84 total yards of offense in the first half, not being able to push the ball down the field. I think it was 3.1 yards per attempt, per attempt, I think, on in the first half. It's just all these numbers. This was the most explosive offense in the league last year. And I know there's offensive line issues, but they just didn't take any shots. And that's the part that, looking back now, an hour, 2 hours post-game, at least take a shot here or there. And there weren't any, and they didn't take any. And I know Jamar Chase was frustrated by it. And I think that this team is pretty frustrated right now. Joe Burrow is as frustrated as I've seen him. An incompletion to Joe Mixon, I remember. He was really frustrated there. And then there was a penalty that kept him on the field. But Burrow was as frustrated as I've seen him as a pro. And I think that matters a lot and is pretty telling after an 0-2 start.
Yeah, and I mean, it can start with Burrow in some ways, and we'll talk about the offensive line as well. And certainly I think the offensive line needs to play better, but this is another game where I think Joe Burrow is taking sacks that he didn't necessarily take last year, when he was good anyway, after the first 4 weeks of the season, when he was starting to manage the pocket really well. Something that I've said a lot more than I've wanted to say today, as I've gone on our various national shows to talk about what the heck is going on with the Bengals, the AFC champions starting the season 0-2, is that I don't feel like Joe Burrow is managing the pocket very well. I don't think he's seeing the field very well. And he didn't turn the ball over this week, which is fantastic. And in that regard, there's a step in the right direction there. But the offense was barely more efficient. And I really have questions about the first and second down offense, which is where you think that the passing game might have some advantages because it's a neutral situation where teams have to honor the run. The Bengals just aren't getting production on those downs. Even on that touchdown drive you mentioned, James, the Bengals offense averaging, it took them 18 plays to go 83 yards or so. and that is not a very high yards per play mark. I was looking at that 4.37 yards per play, and they had to convert. Well, they had 4 third downs. They converted 3 of them. They had to convert a 4th down. The longest plays on that drive were 16 10-yard catches for T. Higgins and an 11-yard catch for Jamar Chase. Even when they got the single high looks, the downfield shots weren't there. And I think that includes, and I would have to go look at the L22, the last 2 plays of the game for the Bengals on offense. I think they got single high looks, and the ball came out quick and it came out underneath, and they did not pick up a first down they needed there. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's going to be a lot to learn from all 22 in this game. From watching on TV, we didn't get very many looks downfield. I don't have a good idea of what the Dallas Cowboys are doing in coverage for a lot of the game. I don't have a good idea of what route concepts the Bengals are running to try to beat those coverages. But I did hear Joe Burrow complain after the game. Not complain. Lament the Bengals offense inability to punish teams for playing a lot of Tampa 2 in the run game. He said the run game in the second half is a lot closer to where we want it to be. And I'm paraphrasing, but it sounds like this team doesn't really have answers for what they're seeing right now. And it's Burrow, and it's the offensive line, and it's the play design, and it's the play calling, and it's the offensive structure, and it's all of these things. It's not just one of the things. You can point almost anywhere on offense and say there's a problem here, and you would probably be right.
Yep. I mean, you go down the list, and there's issues. I agree with you. I think Burrow, there's a couple times where I feel like he would have made throws and held onto the ball, and then he was getting hit, or he was scrambling, or insert whatever happened. So that's certainly there. But the thing you hit on, and Burrow talked about it a little bit, Tampa 2 beaters. That'd be nice to have a couple of those. And Jamar Chase talked about it too. He said, we're going to have to start making adjustments on the fly. Teams know how to defend us now. And so we need to be able to adjust and move. And he said that, like, that's pretty much what I was right there. Now I'm paraphrasing, and I'll tweet out exactly what he said, the link to the video, but like, that's what he said.
Yeah.
And Jamar keeps it 100 essentially all the time. And so he was very frustrated. And I think they're extremely frustrated because I'll be honest, they had no business losing to the Dallas Cowboys. For all the show that this is a gorgeous stadium, by the way. And for those wondering, they're using leaf blowers to clean the seats here at Jerry World, so that's why there's that background. But they shouldn't have lost today. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and I'll even in this offensive line, they shouldn't have lost today. And they need to figure it out right now, because I've seen this before, Jake. Mm-hmm. And no, not an AFC title team in Cincinnati. I haven't seen that. I wasn't alive for the first 2. But what I have seen is a splash year, and then you never get back to that level.
Yeah.
05, right? And then 06, it was like, oh, well, they're not that good, and oh, they are good, and they're making this playoff run, and they get I think it was 8-6 or 8-5. They beat the Ravens, and then they fall flat on their face late in the season. And it was just this up and down roller coaster that ended in disaster. Like, this is not one of the AFC contending teams. They're not playing like it, and they're not it. And so maybe they will be at one point. But remember, I said that going into this game. If they're one of these Buffaloes, the Chiefs, if they're that type of team, the damn Steelers lost to the Patriots today and Mac Jones. Okay? And the Bengals lose to them, and then they lose to a guy named Cooper Rush. And they knew Micah Parsons was going to be tough to block. They knew that the Cowboys were going to play too high. They knew these things. And the fact that they just came out, they're down 17-3 at half, and just kind of, I don't know if they thought the Cowboys were going to just roll over or what, but there was no energy on either side of the ball at the start of it. And the slow start part of it, man, if you get up on Cooper Rush, it is over. Mm-hmm. We talked about that with Marcus. And instead they gave Cooper Rush and this crowd and everybody something to cheer about. And when you dig yourself that much of a hole, it's really hard to get out of.
Yeah. All those things are absolutely true. A lot more to break down in this game. You can talk about the defense, the slow starts, what Burrow had to say, the offensive line. We haven't really gotten that in. to the offensive
Oh,
line.
we will.
We're going to
We
have
will.
to.
Yep.
Probably also some coach talk coming as well.
And defense. Yep.
Plenty to talk about here on Locked On Bengals. We'll continue the post-game show coming up next.
But first, prize picks, because you can still win in week 2 of the NFL season with prize picks. How does prize picks work? Well, you pick 2 to 5 players and you decide if they're going to score more or less than their prize picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. In fact, we've had listeners turn $100 into $1,000. Boom, just like that. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes, of course, the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, PGA, college football, and so much more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy, safe and fast withdrawals, and it's operational in over 30 states and Canada, Jake. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Again, if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, they will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100.
What's going to be very interesting to me when I watch this game from the coach's film angles is what's going on with the offensive line and how is that impacting play calling. Because like we've talked about, there were no downfield shots in this game, even when it looked like there might have been opportunities from the pre-snap look to get to that. Joe Burrow even talked about after the game, maybe they need to put in more checks for him to get them into some shot plays when he feels like they have an opportunity to do so. Maybe I'm reading too much into that comment, but that is something that he said toward the end of his press conference that I found to be really interesting as well. But the offensive line, according to PFF, gave up 11 pressures on 44 pass blocking snaps, most of those, predictably, to Micah Parsons, who has 7 pressures in this game, according to PFF, 2 sacks, 3 pass rush wins that didn't result in pressure, and a pass rush win rate north of 50%. So, again, we're talking about the offensive line, James, and I can't tell you how many times this offseason you said we shouldn't be talking about the offensive line. I don't want to be talking about the offensive line. We're talking about the offensive line again, but I will say that it's not – the offensive line wasn't great. Joe Burrow didn't manage the pocket great either. I think he made it look worse than it was in the first place, but I think that there's still reason to have hope that the offensive line will get better over the course of the season. It hasn't been good enough to start. La'el Collins hasn't been good enough to start, and Jonah Williams almost gave up another strip sack. That was really the main wart of the game that I noticed from Jonah Williams. And La'el Collins, I thought other times fought back with a valiant second effort after losing initially, and then Joe Burrow didn't necessarily have anywhere to go. So there are communication issues. La'el Collins not blocking Micah Parsons on a play where he comes free on a third down, for example. But I still am not sounding alarm bells. I'm not hitting the panic button on the offensive line quite yet. And a lot of people in my Twitter mentions anyway are ready to talk about Frank Pollock and talk about this offensive line in a big way.
Yeah, and I get that. I understand that it's frustrating. And so you want to point fingers. And the offensive line deserves its fair share. Look, they haven't been good enough. They haven't. Could they be good enough at some point? Sure. Is it as bad as it was last year? I don't think so. I don't think it's as bad as it was last year. I don't think it's fun to watch what's happening right now. I don't think, it's clearly still a topic, which is against what I wanted, of course. So that's where I start. But the sacks are too much, man. 13 sacks in 2 weeks. I mean, you do the math there, Jake. You're the math whiz. 6.5 times 17. 6.5 times 70. 70 was too much last year. And I know he's not going to get sacked 6.5 times every week. But my God, it's too many. And then the thing that really, and Burrow mentioned this and Chase mentioned this. And after all of that, if you're not going to block well, damn it, don't get false starts. Cap had a false start. La'el Collins had 2 false starts. They're not moving the ball anyway. And so you put them behind the chains 1st and 15, and these Cowboys are like, hey, Micah's going to get there on one of these plays, so we can drop back and just let Joe run around and scramble and get hit. And that's what happened a lot. So I think the communication stuff is still an issue. And I asked Joe about it. I asked Zach about it, and he said there was issues. I asked Joe about it. He said it was better this week. Who do you believe? I think there's still issues, and it needs to get ironed out. And I'm sick and tired of watching Burrow get sacked a ton. And I think he is going to be a quarterback that just gets sacked because of his playmaking style. Sure. Not 6 times. And, the other part of this, again, if you start slow
Mm-hmm.
and you're down, you're going to want to throw the ball and you're going to try to push the ball, except they didn't try to push the ball. So that part doesn't even ring true. Jesus. His throw chart. Have you seen his passing chart?
I have.
It was,
but that's what I mean about needing to see the routes. Like, I need to see the routes that they were running on the plays where the ball didn't go deep anyway. Because I don't even know if they tried to attack downfield. And that's what stood out to me about the last 2 plays of the game when they had the single high looks. I think they had single high looks there, and they didn't even try. That would be more concerning to me.
I asked Jamar if they called anything because he said we need to take some shots. And I said, did they call shot plays? And he said, I don't remember.
So Taylor was asked about that as well. You probably remember from his press conference. He said they had some called and then they had to check out of him.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll never really know there. And I am very interested to go back and see what happened on some of the plays where Joe took sacks that I didn't think were strictly on the offensive line. There were some plays where I thought the ball should have certainly been away. There were some plays where I thought Burrow kind of invited the pressure or didn't manage the pressure very well, where some other quarterbacks might have done it differently, or Joe Burrow last year might have done it differently. And there were still some vintage Joe Burrow plays in this game. The touchdown to T. Higgins, I thought, was a fantastic play, a throw on the left sideline just outside the outstretched fingers and fingernail of Trayvon Diggs, I assume, gets right by Diggs to T. Higgins for a first down in a big spot. There were some really nice plays for Joe Burrow in this game, but certainly what was missing was the explosive part of the offense. And you need at least some of that. You need at least some intermediate opportunities. And the Cowboys, to their credit, did a great job of coming up and tackling Jamar Chase on a few run after catch opportunities when the Bengals got him the ball out of the slot, which is really the only most of Jamar Chase's production in this game came out of the slot. So the Cowboys certainly had a plan there. And, if you're Zac Taylor and the Bengals in this offensive line, there's a lot to go back and look at, but there has to be a way for you to get some of these explosive plays back into your offense. That's what you were last year. It's got to be back.
And it's not like the offense. That's the thing is there's going to be people that say, oh, well, time. There's not enough
They didn't
time.
have it last year, and
they didn't have it last year. Their offensive line last year, I think, was worse than it's been this year. I know the sack numbers are high, but the type of hits versus the type of hits Burrow's taking now, they felt worse last year. They felt more gruesome. I think they're doing a little bit better, and I'm not defending the line because I think it's still an issue, and we're obviously spent a whole segment talking about it. But if you're getting hit anyways, take the shot. Mm-hmm. If he's getting sacked anyways, you might as well have the play dialed up, because you're going to hit on him. That's why I just that's the part. If this offense isn't explosive, they were bad at being consistent last year offensively and moving the ball up and down the field. They were so inconsistent. But you know what they had? What they consistently did well, Jake? Big plays.
Yeah.
And so now, because who plays safe? Because Malik Hooker and who's the other safety? Is 6.
I don't remember.
He's number 6. Because they're in a too high shell, you can't get the ball to Jamar Chase deep. Say it out loud. So
it was Donovan Wilson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who?
Mm-hmm.
Who?
Right.
All right. So that's the part of it where they're too talented. And I literally remember saying this in 06 and 07 when it was Chad and TJ and Carson and Chris Henry. And I'm just like, man, they are too damn talented to be losing to and insert the team. Michael Vick's Atlanta Falcons. I remember that loss. I remember I think that was 06. Anyways, I hate it. I hate it because I thought it last week and I didn't want to mention it, Jake. And it feels that way. We have a lot more to cover. We do. And we're going to go from hate to love in just a second. We'll get into the defense and more, but first you got to tell everyone about Turo.
That's right, Turo, the world's largest car sharing marketplace. And that sounds great to me when I'm traveling. I don't want to pay crazy prices with certain companies, but Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. If it's in the US, Canada, or the UK, you can get spacious SUV or a minivan or a sports car or a classic car. Maybe it's a special event and you want a nice luxury car. Well, if it's on Turo, it's available to you. And if it's something else you're looking for, maybe it's just practicality to get from point A to point B, affordable economy cars on a budget as well. Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you sometimes. And well, that sounds like the epitome of convenience. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions do apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com.
Now I got to tell you about Schultz and Sons Jewelers. I love Schultz and Sons, and that's what I meant when I said we're going to go from hate to love, because I love my friends at Schultz and Sons, including Matt Schultz. He's a third-generation jeweler, big Bengals fan. He's probably as heartbroken as ever right now that the Bengals are 0-2. But if you're looking for a local jeweler, high-quality products, high-quality service, they're not going to guide you. In our meeting with Matt, you know what? He said, I talked someone out of buying something the other day because that did not fit them. That was not the good fit for what they were looking for. He is not going to just sell you something to sell you something. Instead, he's going to educate you. He's going to help you find what's right for you. And, well, they're AGS certified. Only 1 in 20 jewelers are AGS certified. So they're a part of the American Gem Society, for those that don't know. Point is, if you're looking for any type of piece, engagement ring, hot take chain, necklace, earrings, something to take your mind off of the Bengals 0-2 start, Schultz & Sons is the place to go. You can check them out right now in Fort Mitchell on Dixie Highway, right across from the Mercedes-Benz dealer. Schultz & Sons is the place to go when you're looking for quality jewelry. It's schulzdiamonds.com. schulzdiamonds.com, and make sure you tell them Locked On Bengals sent you.
James, the defense, I thought, for the second straight week played pretty well. You said we're going to go to love. Although, before we get there, they didn't start the game very well. The Cowboys scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, and that's Cooper Rush's Dallas Cowboys. Cooper Rush finding throws with pressure in his face, standing in against blitzes. The Dallas Cowboys running the ball pretty well. And part of that is they did have a very long first drive that was extended with some conversions, and DJ Reader wasn't on the field the whole time, and Dallas ran the ball pretty well when DJ Reader wasn't on the field. And, DJ Reader can't always be on the field. But the point is, DJ Reader, by the way, had another great game. You go down 14 points, you give up 2 first quarter touchdowns to a bad quarterback on the road. You're making the job very hard for your offense, and you're providing a lot of ammunition for that road crowd and a lot of confidence for that injured, banged up offense. Now, that doesn't excuse the Bengals offense by any means for what they did or didn't do in this game until the fourth quarter when they finally scored a touchdown. But talk about those slow starts. Last week, the defense didn't really start all that slow to me. It was the offense. The defense, I thought, against the Steelers played mostly a complete game. Against the Cowboys, it took them a little bit to find their footing, and then they were very good. And they finally got a turnover, and they almost had 2 more. But, maybe if those almost were actual takeaways, the game looks a little bit different in the end, especially Mike Hilton's nearly pick 6, which I thought was a fantastic mental rep for Mike Hilton. He recognized what was happening, broke on the ball, but just couldn't quite get there in time before the Dallas tight end, whose name I'm forgetting, got his hand on the ball. And
Dalton Schultz,
thank you. I knew it was a Schultz too. I just couldn't remember the first name because we just talked about a different one. Got a hand on the ball, and Mike Hilton wasn't able to bring it in. But for a team like the Cowboys, I was hoping for another performance like we saw against the Steelers instead of how they started the game. And they did get there and they eventually did play very well. And we'll talk about that too. But as part of the slow start discussion, the defense is unfortunately included.
Yeah, they were. And overall, you're right. They played well, and they played well enough to win the game. The offense does what the offense should have done. They would have won the game. That said, first drive, all week we talk about starting fast, fasting start. See, I'm ending slow. Starting fast here, Jake. And what does Cooper Rush do? 12 plays, 4th down conversion, 75 yards. Next drive. The Bengals answer. They get a field goal. It's all right. Let's settle in. It's 7-3. It's not going to be ugly. It'll be okay, even though that drive was kind of ugly offensively. They did enough to get some points. 6 plays. Tony Pollard streaks down. You can't have it. Not on the road in games like this. When you get a backup quarterback in a team like the Cowboys, where all week they were told how crappy they were. My Uber driver on the way here, was it Uber? It was one of them. Anyways, on the way here was like, man, they need to get Sean Payton. Mike McCarthy needs to get his bleepity bleep out of here. That's what the talk was in Dallas going into this game. The sky was falling.
Yep.
So just jump on them right away. And I thought that defensively they would be able to do that even if the offense had their issues, and they didn't. They gave them hope. Cooper Rush for most of this game wasn't that good. But the first 2 drives, it was enough hope. It was enough momentum. It got the crowd in it. The crowd stayed in it throughout the game. That's the part that stinks. So overall, it's a pretty good effort by the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give up 17 points and not 20, I'll take it all day. I think 20 is too much against this offense. But it's when the points came.
Yep.
Back-to-back drives, momentum changes everything. And in the Bengals offense now, that they're on their heels. The team itself they're just in this deep hole again. And it's really hard on the road, man. It's really hard on the road to get out of it. It's super loud. It felt AT&T Stadium's a lot like SoFi. Today, a lot of the hype and stuff leading up to this game, it felt like the Super Bowl. Like there's a lot of, and I don't mean outside. I mean in here, like environment-wise, everything like that. It's wild here. And so you let the home team stick around a little bit and think, oh, yeah, Cooper Rush, it's 14-3, 17-3 at halftime. My God, you're just playing with fire on the road. And so that's the big negative with this defense.
And the crowd was in it, and that led to some of those issues on offense. Like the last offensive play of the game for the Bengals, the headset went out, and the Dallas Cowboys are in the game. Obviously, the crowd is in full throat, and they're having a hard time getting the play communicated. Not that that's an excuse, but it's just worth pointing out that the crowd was in it the entire way, really, the entire way. And the defense, to their credit, like I said, they did settle down. They played, again, really disciplined football, I think, for the most part in the second half. They gave up some more yards this week. Cooper Rush, I thought, did a really nice job of standing in against pressure and just ripping it to whoever he thought he could. He was nearly punished twice, probably should have thrown 2 interceptions. Instead, doesn't have a turnover to his credit on the day, and had some really nice plays to Cowboys receivers settling down into zones. Eli Apple had a forgettable day if you're looking for a forgettable day on the defensive side of the ball. And Trey Hendrickson against Dan Moore and Tyler Smith, I would have liked to have seen more. He was on the injury report again, as I mentioned, with the back thing. Hopefully that's not affecting him too much, but against this caliber of competition, hoping to see a little bit more from Trey Hendrickson. I thought DJ Reader, again, played a fantastic game. I thought BJ Hill had a great second half. In run defense, got his hand on a ball that got the Dallas Cowboys to punt the ball, give the Bengals one more opportunity to go down there and try to win the game toward the end of regulation there. I thought Sam Hubbard had a pretty nice game as well. Had a cleanup sack on a pressure that I think DJ Reader created with the bull rush, and he got over there to clean it up. Good hustle play for Sam Hubbard, looping around on a stunt. And also had a number of nice run stops as well in the game. So plenty of nice performances on defense. Logan Wilson and Von Bell combining to force a fumble that DJ Reader recovers as well. But, against this caliber of offense, I am looking for a little bit more from the defense at this point. I didn't have that complaint as much against the Steelers because of the kind of offense they were running. The Cowboys weren't protecting Cooper Rush as much, and the Bengals weren't able to create as much havoc as I would have liked to have seen given that. So I do think they generally played well. I do think there were some opportunities that were there for them that they didn't quite seize.
Mm-hmm. And that's the part of it. If I would have told you they forced one turnover and get one sack, that would have felt underwhelming to me, right? Like, and I know there was more, and it's not that simple. But it
Well,
also,
even giving up 20 points is more than I thought they would give up. And they were straight up like, this wasn't short field stuff. This wasn't often turnovers like we talked about. So
no, in like the last drive, did you like? I don't know why. I just knew. I was like, all right, it's going to be 20-17, and I rolled with it. I didn't have two different game stories today. I didn't have to. When they tied it, I backed down a little bit, but the moment they punted, it was like, And speaking of punting, just let's get into the coaching stuff a little bit. One more time to do this throughout the week, and so tomorrow when we talk again. But
yeah,
4th and 6 in the second quarter, I'm doing one of two things. I'm using arguably the best kicker in football in the dome at 59, 60 yards. And I know that sounds crazy. Oh, man, that's so long. He would have made it.
he kicked the 59-yarder last week. Outside.
Yeah. So that's one, right? Or you go for it and you're aggressive and you say, all right, Jamar, run a slant in the slot and have Hurst on that, something, a real safe play to get 7 yards. And instead they punt. And I was just like, and they don't end up getting anything from it. And by the way, that is an example. The defense didn't give up points there, but the defense failed because they gave up the long run to Zeke, like a 12-yard run on the very next play on first down. And the Cowboys got a couple first downs and were able to flip the field. So it was a bad decision by Zac, but the defense didn't get it done either.
Right. This one's going to be much more controversial to our listeners. For anyone still listening at the 32-minute mark, the 4th down decision bot has varying degrees of recommendations for what you should do. Maybe we'll talk about this one more tomorrow. The 4th down decision bot was plus 12% win probability to go for it on 4th and 2 from your own 16 versus punting it there. And I don't fault Zac Taylor for this one, because going for it from your own 16 when you have overtime potentially on the other side, I get why you would punt. And Kevin Huber hit a 63-yard punt, but you're punting from your own end zone, and all Dallas needs is a field goal, and they have timeouts. And they didn't manage the end of the game well, did Dallas, but you go for it and you make it, then at least you can run the clock, whatever it is. But anyway, that one's more understandable from Zac Taylor, certainly. But the 9-minute drive, the lack of urgency on that drive, I take issue with that time management as well. Probably something we can dive into more as we have time to digest and get into it tomorrow.
Yeah, I actually had issue on 3rd down. Let's run something that's going to get 4 yards.
Yeah, I would love to see what that play was.
And like, I get it, the catch and run stuff, and it can work. Like with Hayden Hurst, it worked with the catch and run. But this is the game. And so I'm fine with the ball going to Boyd, by the way. That's great. It needs to be not a flat route where you're hoping that he can make a defender miss, or he's going to have enough room there to get the first down. And I agree with you. There was no urgency on the 19-play drive. None. I'm like, what if they don't get the 2-point conversion? Like, what are you guys like? Move a little bit now. Let's move. And they didn't. So we have a lot to talk about, Jake. I would have lost my tail if you would have told me that they would start out 0-2. And yet here we are. I'm listening to leaf blowers at Jerry World. We got security guards as I was walking up from the field doing my post-game stand-up. I overheard the security guard, and I tweeted this. Man, who would have thought they would have won? Talking about the Cowboys. Like, what a wild world we live in. I think the Bengals are 1-7 in Dallas. Yeah, it's something like that.
They've got a lot to figure out here on this young season. You can't start 0-2. That makes it really, really hard. And if we're talking about the playoffs for this team in 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 weeks, whatever it is, we're probably going to be looking back at these two games and it's going to hurt them one way or the other. But I don't think we can even really be talking about the playoffs right now. They have a lot to prove to get back into that conversation. And next week, it's the Jets who just beat the Browns in hilarious Browns fashion. But who am I to throw a stone in a glass house? And then it's the Dolphins who, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, terrorized the Baltimore Ravens secondary in the second half in their comeback win. So
They could have been tied for first place, Jake.
yeah. 0-4 for the AFC North this week, and the Bengals knew that it was 0-3 going into their game. They just had to take care of business. They did not. We have many, many questions on the offensive side of the ball. I think there are questions about the coaching staff. There are questions about Burrow and the offensive line and getting out to a fast start. And, well, the Bengals will have to answer these questions because there are high expectations for this team in Cincinnati, and so far they haven't quite hit the mark. We'll continue to break it down as we will react further to the game tomorrow after we've had a chance to digest and do some analysis, talk about some of the post-game comments as well. More coverage as we've got you covered here every day on Locked On Bengals coming your way. Thanks for listening, Bengals fans. Hoo day, and have a good one.